Welcome to Explore, Explain, Highlights. In this highlights package, we'll be looking at Season 5, Episode 6, with our guests, Michael Brenner, Sarah Slobin, and Jon Schwabish, discussing the tools of our trade.
I watched the rise of D3 with Michael Bostock, and that is a very idiosyncratic library, which very much reflects his genius brain, but was also promoted and out there because of it was being used by the New York Times, which at the moment was one of the few database shops that was actually creating everything. Simultaneously, Raphael was sort of on the platform, but nobody hired those guys. Had those guys been hired and promoted, just like when you look at Tableau, which I think is sort of like having a casino when you need to go to a mom and pop shop. Tableau became.
Hold on, let's pause on that just for a moment, because
what?
That line is, and let's cut that line. That line is like just.
That's the clip.
Yeah, that's the clip.
That's the clip.
That's the intro clip.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just keep going.
Yeah.
The point that I have made, so with that caveat that I really like it, here's the point that I've made to the folks over at Flourish time and time again, that you should be able to, within the tool, within a very simple click of a button or toggle the thing, if you have three graphs, they should be linked together. So instead of having three different filters for the same data, right? Because I think 99.99% of dashboards that are actually used to make decisions are bar chart, line chart, map, and that's it, right? All the stuff you see on Tableau Public or Power BI Viz of the Day is like, it's the
exception,
case, right?
Yeah.
Whenever I tell Flourish, you have, because you can do it. It is possible to do it in the tool. Whenever I make this point to them, their response is, we are a data storytelling firm. We are not a dashboarding firm. Now, I don't know what data storytelling firm means, so that's a side point. But they have, to Sarah's point, they have made a conscious organizational firm level decision that they are going to focus on the storytelling, on the scrollytelling thing, and dashboarding is not what they are going to work on. I'm not a software developer, so I don't know how much time it takes to build that sort of capability. But I think if that sort of capability immediately lets you compete with a tool like Tableau and Power BI, for better, for worse.
Again, it starts with your own idiosyncratic brain. So if you start with your idiosyncratic brain and you say, I relate better to R, I relate better to Python, I relate better to Excel, I'm interested in Tableau, I like Power BI, I like Flourish, I like Illustrator, whatever, I like, not I like to do this thing because it's become fetishized among the database community. I think we saw that with like sort of the rise of programmers, and you have to be able to code to do these things. And then we went from having to build the tools to Flourish and other, data wrapper. So my point is that when you're using a tool, you use what makes sense to you and you get better at it. You need to have a story, and this is what a data storytelling team is, Jon. You need to have, from my point of view, you need to have a story, or you need to have visual that draws the reader in. And because of that, sometimes you have to go beyond what the tool offers you.
Because you've got, this is a bastardized term now, but design thinking, or thinking like a designer, and then you bring in systems thinking, and then you bring in data as a content into these environments, and you can allow, so for example, Jon's 50-year Comet story, actually there's some key things that would relate to other data types that we could extract from that, build something that's more white label or tofu, meaning that we could pump other types of data into that, and within a context change the framework and it would work perfect. And again, this is hacking the box where we've got a limited set of resources and we've got a lot of constraints, but we can take some of those core concepts from whatever it might be and apply them to different contexts. Because those again, data is just a content type and it reacts to things once you start putting variables against it and it starts to take form, right? You could take one data set, you could visualize it in 50 different charts. Each chart's going to give you a different perspective. Each chart will tell you something different about that data. And maybe, and again, coming back to audience, what the point that you're trying to get across, you could use all 50 of those charts in a multitude of different delivered versions that may be better for, again, what I'm actually talking about is Urban's double pyramid. Who's your audience and what's your context and how much information are you delivering? I know I use it all the time.
Yeah.
I have a lot of designer friends who hate Canva, right? Because they're like, it's cheap.
I love it.
I mean, I love it too, but
is that a corporate
I can
thing,
understand, John? But I can understand why you don't want to, because it's a skill and you don't want to necessarily give a tool where people think they're suddenly a designer because they can, drop a few things in. Similarly, I'm not sure I want people to be able to run some sort of statistical analysis without
100%.
any data or statistical understanding of those things. I mean, these are
Precisely.
all parts of the system are skills. And so having a tool that tries to let anybody do all of it, I think is for probably
because the tool's not knowledge, right?
Right. No, the tool's not knowledge.
Yeah, but I think that's what gets confused a lot. To your point about Canva and design or statistical analysis, is that just because I still don't know what I'm doing or quote unquote what this actually means or is telling me,
right?
And you come out on the wrong side. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And I think it goes back to the one of the early points about what is a tool for? It's about the reproducibility. It's about doing things quicker than humans can do. It's about doing things that maybe are more efficient. And I think going back to one of your points, I think it was you, Michael, said about cleaning data. Actually, sometimes I want to do it by hand. I want to roll the sleeves up and get in there because I learn about the texture of the data.
Absolutely.
And actually, some of the issues of the data become the story, the gaps.
Exactly. And if you don't understand your data, if you start by not being able to understand your data, there's nothing you can do with it. If you don't understand what you're working with, who it came from, where it came from, what it's missing, what it has, there's no way you can plug it into any tool, any of these tools, and come up with garbage.
Thank you for joining us for this Explore, Explain highlights episode. As always, the full episode is available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. We hope to see you again soon on another episode of Explore, Explain.